So I take you to the esteemed, the inimitable, the prestigious, the intellectual giant Joy Reid of MSNBC. And in this article, Joy Reid shows us that the greatest threat in America today is Christian nationalism. Now, this is by Jahan Jones, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and this is an opinion piece, but let's face it, everything at MSNBC is an opinion piece. The headline is this: why Christian nationalism is suddenly at the forefront. And I'm going to read this article to you because it really is important for us understanding our cultural moment here. And so it says this: if you were at the center of a religious crusade, do you think you'd be able to detect it? I ask because it's becoming increasingly clear that the United States is under siege by Christian fundamentalist and traditionalist. Now, what he's trying to say right there is that if you disagree with me, it is because you are delusional. Don't you love that? So he's saying, you're probably so deep in Christianity, you don't even realize that you've been eaten up with Christian nationalism. Now, first thing I got to say about this is that Christian nationalism is a completely invented and created term by the left. And this is a term that has been created by the left to categorize Christians that disagree with them. So if you disagree with the left, or if you disagree with a progressive Christian, well, then that is because you are an extremist. You are a Christian fundamentalist, and you are a Christian nationalist. You have to be. And then they go on to say things like this too, just so you know. Well, if you believe that America was created on Christian principles, well, then you're obviously a Christian nationalist. And like anybody with any understanding of history understands that this is true, that our nation was not founded by a group of people who hated Christians and Christianity in the church. It was founded by a group of people seeking religious freedom from oppressive false religion in the guise of Christianity. That's the appropriate way to view history. So of course, if we concur, well, obviously we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and given by their creator certain inalienable rights. Well, what is this talk of a creator? What is this talk of God? Are these just agnostic deists creating our nation? No, of course, these are people like John Adams, who said that the creation of our nation is for a religious people, and the construction of it is wholly inadequate for any other. So we need a religious people to understand what this American experiment is all about. So of course, if we acknowledge a simple historical fact, then all of a sudden we are Christian nationalists. The article goes on. The reported text exchanges between then Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Virginia Jenny Thomas, who is Clarence Thomas's wife, the right-wing activist and wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, gave us a window into the conservative movement's religious push to make America in its conservative Christian image. As he was exploring ways to overturn the 2020 election, reportedly texted Thomas, "This is a, quote, this is a fight of good versus evil," end quote, going on to say, quote, "Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs," end quote. Now, the only problem with these texts that Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff, and Jenny Thomas, Clarence Thomas's wife, exchanged with each other is that they were absolute fabrications and lies. These are not things that were actually exchanged with each other. Because you might ask yourself, well, how did anybody actually get these private text messages between Meadows and Jenny Thomas? Well, the answer to that is that they didn't. You can see USA Today fact-checking this MSNBC article and saying it is that these texts were actually from a satire site. So they're actually clearly willing to use lies in the service of their truth. The article goes on. And the last week, another right-wing Christian group, the Southern Baptist Convention. That's right. The Southern Baptist Convention is a right-wing extremist group. They were exposed after an investigation found evidence of widespread allegations of sex abuse by clergy members. What does this have to do with Christian nationalism? We don't know. As my colleague Anthea Butler wrote, last year the SBC has been deeply involved in Republican politics and glommed onto Trump during his time in the White House. All this exposure is serving its purpose, drawing the ugliness of Christian nationalism out of the shadows so it can be seen publicly for what it is, oppressive far-right conservatism wrapped in Scripture. So you get the idea here, is that Christian nationalism is anybody that invokes the name of God, anybody that believes that Christianity should have an impact on what happens in our society. Oh, like you mean in the civil rights movement, like when Martin Luther King Jr., Pastor Martin Luther King Jr., or maybe you think about the Second Great Awakening and its impact on the removal of slavery in America. Oh, you mean stuff like that? Now, the Christian progressive is not a threat to people like the writer of this article here and to people like Joy Reid. They're not a threat, so they're never going to write an article about progressive Christianity. But of course, authentic biblical Christianity is a true threat to the postmodernist and to the neo-Marxist. And I guess at the end of the day, here's what I'm saying, is that Jordan Peterson recognizes this better than most pastors do, better than most churches do. And this is why he is warning us. He realizes that there is a group of people out there that are threatened so deeply by Christianity that they will call you names. They will include you as those who tried to invade the Capitol on January 6th, when of course there is no single Christian on the planet that endorses any authentic, real Bible-believing Christian who agrees that breaking into the Capitol was a good idea on January 6th. But of course, they're going to lump you all together. Why? Because Christianity is a threat to the progressive movement. It's a threat to liberalism. It stands as the biggest threat as far back as people like Karl Marx himself, who declared that religion was the opiate of the masses, because he knew that Christianity was the biggest threat to the cultural revolution or to the Marxist revolution that he wanted to implement upon society. So therefore, he needed to oppose Christianity at all costs, not to mention ethnic minorities and Jews, because the guy was absolutely a racist and anti-Semitic as well. So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Anything Hurts come your way. Thanks for watching.